By all accounts, Jesus was a popular person early in his ministry. Every gospel tells about the large crowds that followed him, amazed at his power as he turned water into wine, made the blind see, the deaf hear, and fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, things known as miracles. Miracles are an important part of Jesus' story. They certainly helped make some people believe in him. But while miracles played an important role, Jesus was sent to do something far more important than miracles. The Gospel of Mark says this as early as the 2nd chapter. In the 1st chapter, we hear that Jesus has been casting out unclean spirits and healing people with illnesses and leprosy. Chapter 2 starts with the story of a paralyzed man, and the details in that story are important. Jesus was in a crowded home, preaching. 4 men who had a paralyzed friend brought him to the house on a mat for Jesus to heal him. But the house was too crowded for them to get in. Desperate times called for desperate measures, so they made an opening in the roof of the house and lowered the man down to Jesus. How did Jesus respond? Mark says, when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Son, your sins are forgiven." Surprise? Jesus didn't heal the man's paralysis. Instead, he forgave the man's sins. Some of the people there were more than surprised. They were angry. Why? Not because Jesus didn't heal the man. They were angry because they thought Jesus committed blasphemy by pretending to be God. Because as Mark says, who can forgive sins but God alone? Even though they hadn't said anything, Jesus knew what they were thinking. So he asked, "Which is easier, to say your sins are forgiven or to tell the paralyzed man to get up and walk?" Jesus continued, "So that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins," he said to the paralytic, "I say to you, rise, pick up your mat, and go home." Immediately the man picked up his mat and walked out of the house. This miracle helps us understand what's at the heart of the miracles. As memorable as Jesus' miracles are, the story of the paralytic tells us why Jesus did the miracles. To demonstrate that Jesus was no ordinary man. He wasn't just another prophet, and he wasn't an ordinary rabbi or teacher. Jesus' miracles demonstrated that he had power over nature, over Satan, and over death itself. In this story, Jesus starts to tell people he came to defeat sin, death, and the devil. That's why the first thing he said was, "Son, your sins are forgiven." That's what Jesus really came to do. Of course he could, and did, heal people physically. But what he really came to do is to forgive sin. The paralyzed man's sin, and now your sin.